Hello and welcome to this week's Office Hours presentation. This is Paul Hoyt. Welcome you to our Office Hours presentation, which is a relaxed, informal mentoring session that we do every Monday at noon Pacific time. All these recordings and slides and the exercises we have in the presentations are archived in our members area on our website, and all these recordings are available on my YouTube channel at youtube.com/user/Paul Hoyt. The reasons we do these is because being a successful entrepreneur can be a great experience, but it's tough. You really do need education, training, and the support that years of experience can bring you in order to be successful. And I really want you to get to know me, because when you do, you'll know that I really do care about you. I want you to be successful in your life, in every area of your life, whatever that means for you. I want you to find the greatness, the happiness, the divinity within yourself, and then embrace it, remember it, and try to live it every single day as I do. My vision is to help millions of CEOs and entrepreneurs accelerate their business growth and enjoy greater harmony and balance in their lives. And you can help by passing the word. If you find these office hours presentations beneficial, then by all means, tell your colleagues and friends, other small business owners, entrepreneurs, CEOs that you know about. Tell them about the office hours presentations. Invite them to attend the presentations live, or invite them to listen to the recordings. We'd love to have more and more people on the calls. Our office hours agenda are usually an in-depth discussion of a business success principle. Then I offer some closing remarks and special offers and an invitation for next week's session. But today is strictly all open questions and answers. I don't have a prepared presentation. Well, I got a couple of slides, but I don't have a long 20 or 30 or 40-minute presentation prepared for your day. During the course of today's presentation, I invite you to join us at the Brilliant Business Groups on Facebook and LinkedIn. The Facebook address or URL is facebook.com/groups/brilliantbusiness. And on LinkedIn, it's http://bit.ly/brilliant-business-group. Because as a member of those Brilliant Business Groups, you'll get to see my postings on the business success principle of the day that I do both on Facebook and LinkedIn, and the energy of the day posting that I do every day on Facebook and in the Brilliant Business Group and on my business page within Facebook. We're up to number 522 now. And during the call, you can make comments and ask questions, share your insights, and tell what your takeaways are of the call in the Facebook Brilliant Business Group. Our goal is to have 20 comments and liked in that Facebook group. Kind of a pre-announcement here. This Wednesday, we're doing an Awakened Conversation webinar. Oops, this slide is a little wrong. It is Wednesday, April the 29th, not Thursday, April 29th, at 6 p.m. Pacific. So watch your emails for sign-up information. And we'll talk a little bit more about the Awakened CEO system and how that can bring great benefits to you and your business. Today's topic, however, is just open questions and answers and group coaching. As always, we try to relate this to one or more of the key performance areas, and today it's open game. You can ask a question on any one of the key performance areas and anything to do with your business. So that means leadership, sales, marketing, financial management, product development, operations, and administration and customer service, any area of the business that you would like to ask a question for. I'm happy to address it here. But first, we want to walk in and talk a little bit about the 3 previous office hours presentations that we did. 4 weeks ago, we did a presentation on the office hours number 72, the science of increasing entrepreneurial success. The following week, we did office hours 73, which was called Driving with Data. And last week, we did one on the office hours number 74, which was Product and Pricing Strategies. In office hours 72, we talked about the concepts and principles in the book Investing in Entrepreneurs, written by Tom Lyons and my friend Greg Lichtenstein, both PhDs in entrepreneurship. We talked a little bit about the authors, the guiding principles that they believed were important for entrepreneurs starting business, some of their key beliefs, and one of their great concepts called the skills ladder. The skills ladder essentially said that people come into business with a variety of skills. Some of them are rookies, some of them are more experienced, and some of them are really quite expert. But we have to know what the skills are in order to match that up with a business so that it gives them the very best chance of success. This book was primarily written for communities for economic development councils, for chambers of commerce, and other communities to help them increase the success of entrepreneurs in their communities. And of course, then we all summed it up with the bottom line. Office Hours number 73 was on driving with data, where we talked about business intelligence, which was data warehousing and data mining. We also talked about key performance indicators, how you as your CEO and business owner can begin to harvest the data that's in your computer systems and use that to your advantage to drive your business with the analytics that can come out of that sort of business intelligence, the data warehousing and data mining, and also to manage your business with key performance indicators, which means measuring the things that are most significant to you and knowing whether or not you're on track by the data that's reported to you on a routine basis. In Office Hours 74 last week, we talked about product and pricing strategies, talked about the three most common pricing strategies, the cost-plus strategy, competitive pricing, and value-based pricing. And then we talked about product portfolio strategies, including product funnels and reverse funnels. So that was a very interesting conversation about how you price your products and organize your products so that you can make sense to your marketplace and attract and keep more customers over time. With that brief little introduction, we're going to go into open questions and answers on any topic that you would like to have. And to start off today, one of the folks who showed up for our call early, Arlene Grimes, had a question for us, and I'm going to take her off mute and invite her to ask the question so that you can all hear, and we'll launch into supporting her how we can. Darlene, welcome to our call today. You are off mute, dear.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Hi, Paul. I have a situation where I have an investor that has funds, and I am looking to purchase a resort. And I have the resort operations, the sales, and marketing piece. He knows nothing about resort operations. He just has the money. So I need to provide some type of simple partnership agreement to get us started, in our journey of making this work. So I was just wondering if you had some insight on that.
I do, and thank you very much for that question. I appreciate it. I have a particular form or template that I think is going to be most helpful to you called a joint venture template. It's on our tribe website, in our portal, in the library, which you can go and download for yourself, or you're welcome to send me an email, and I'll send that to you. And essentially, this template is a great discussion document. So here's just some of the things that are very, very important for you to discuss. Some of the things are, who's going to put what into this joint venture or into this partnership? What contributions are you making? What contributions are they making? And what percentage ownership in the existing enterprise or the new enterprise should each party have based upon their initial contributions? Then after that, the second thing is, what are we going to do going forward? What roles and responsibilities will you have? What roles and responsibilities will your partner have? And what compensation or increase in equity position should they enjoy over time based upon their ongoing contributions? And then any other sort of practical aspects that you want to discuss about the changes in the compensation that would flow to each partner, the changes in the ownership position that would flow to each partner based upon their ongoing contributions. And that particular document is a really great document for discussing those things that are very important to you. So you may have one person who is coming into the business as a partner, like you say, who just strictly brings the money, and that's the only thing that they bring into the business. So they're typically going to want a return on that investment, a return perhaps in terms of distribution of profit, perhaps in terms of some sort of interest-like payments along the way, and certainly an opportunity to own an equity position in the business and enjoy the appreciation of the asset of the business over time. Or they might have a position on the board of directors or board of managers and expect or want some sort of compensation for that, for their operational role in the company. So one additional word about partnerships is that if it's a true partnership, if somebody's coming into the business and is taking an operational role, then that particular transaction is not covered by the Securities and Exchange Commission, which means that you don't have to do a private placement memorandum, you don't have to worry about 504s, 506s, any of those securities attorneys kinds of aspect if they're taking an operational role in the business, even if the business already exists. So if the business exists and somebody comes in and says, I'm going to put some money into the business and I'm going to be your VP of operations, or I'm going to put the money in the business and I'm going to be the CEO, or I'm going to put the money in the business and I'm taking on any other sort of operational responsibilities, then that transaction, that investment event, is not covered by the Securities and Exchange Commission. The rules by the Securities and Exchange Commission are that it has to be an investment in an existing enterprise with the expectation of profits through the results of others. Those 4 criteria. And since they're taking, since they might take an operational role, then it's not through the efforts of others. Go ahead, Darlene.
Well, when you say an existing business, the resort is existing right now and it's making money, but we're forming, I guess we're be forming a new entity to purchase the resort. So I don't know if that qualifies as an existing business, you know.
It absolutely does not. That is not a Securities and Exchange Commission regulated transaction. If you decide to put in $50 and I decide to put in $50 and we start a brand new business, that is not an investment in an existing enterprise. We are starting a new business together, and it's not covered by the Securities and Exchange Commission. We just want to make sure that we have our agreements in place, that discussion about who's going to do what, who's going to put in what sort of ownership should we have today, ownership tomorrow, compensation that we might enjoy over time, etc., to make sure that we have formed a good agreement that can last for years and years and years because we talked the things through and we knew that we had a good agreement in writing going forward. So that is a great question. To be sure to get that template or send me an email, and I'd be happy to send that template to you. I also did a couple of office hours presentations. One of them was on partnering. I don't remember the number of it, but we can look it up. And the other one was on transfer of value, which also had to do with, you know, people working together and forming alliances and partnerships. So I encourage you to take a look at those two and that template, and you'll be very prepared to have those conversations with your potential partner. Thanks so much for that question. I really do appreciate it. I'm going to put you back on mute. And we have a couple of questions that came in through the chat blog window here. Stephanie, I'm going to let you pick one of those and read it for me, and we'll answer a question that came in.
Okay, it's actually from Lewis, who's on the call, and we can unmute him. He's asking about CEO duties. A CEO resigned yesterday. There's a succession issue. The company is 3 weeks away from its largest operation of the year, yay. But when you become the appointed leader of an executive staff of which you are previously not a member, what works best for you? He wants some advice on how to move forward in that position. And again, he's on the call. You can unmute him.
I'll see if I can. I can't unmute him, unfortunately. It said we sent you the audio pin, so we may be able to unmute you in a second. But I'm going to have to at least start out answering these questions here without hearing your voice, Lewis. Wow, what a great opportunity and a great situation to learn a tremendous amount. So I would have, before I heard the first part of it, I would jump in and answer the second part of it, saying, hey, the CEO resigned, and there is a succession issue. No one's appointed to be the successor of that CEO and is ready to jump into the roles and responsibilities of CEO. And it's got the largest operation of the year just a few weeks away. So clearly, you know, it's time to bring in some outside advisors. I'd love to have the opportunity to talk to you about how we might be able to support you in that. There's a sense of urgency, of course, because the biggest operation of your year is just a few weeks away. You have to find somebody to manage that operation. I don't know if you have an existing operations manager or project manager on the board that can really help you determine what tasks are necessary and can bird dog the execution of those tasks so that the biggest event here happens, whatever that event happens to be. in 3 weeks or so. But that's the critical thing. The absolute critical thing is to maintain the operations of the business and be able to make that event happen and pull it off just as quickly as you can with somebody who can manage the project. And then I think it's real important, if that event is live at all or visible to other people at all, is that you have an acting CEO by the time that event pulls off, and that you introduce them. And if it's appropriate, you may also want to introduce or open up the idea of getting a new CEO for your business. And I have talked to many people about getting a new CEO for their business in the past, and my advice is usually pretty consistent, and that is determine for yourself what that ideal CEO will look like, what sort of experience they will have, what they're bringing into the company, if it's in terms of money at all, and what sort of experience in the industry you want them to have, what sort of time availability that you want them to have, what sort of compensation structure do you want to offer them, and paint the picture in your own mind for what that ideal CEO will look like. I helped a company out a few years ago develop that criteria in their checklist, and they wanted somebody that was, they wanted somebody that was 45 to 60 years old. They wanted them to live in a particular area in the United States. They wanted them to have at least 10 years experience in their particular industry. They wanted them to have experience raising capital. They wanted them to have experience running a business with at least $5 million in revenue. They wanted them to have a golden Rolodex, which meant that they wanted them to be able to help them raise money. And those were just some of the criteria that they had for their ideal CEO. Now, when you paint that picture in your mind of who the ideal CEO is, you never know who's going to show up. It could be the ideal person, the ideal candidate that shows up right away. And when you're having emails out to your network of trusted advisors, your inner circle for the company, you can say, do you know somebody who fits these criteria or is coming close to that? And you'll have a chance, at least, of getting your ideal CEO. If the ideal CEO doesn't show up, then you can have the discussion about why this person isn't the ideal. Maybe they don't have the 5 or 10 years experience in the industry. Maybe they haven't managed a business with $5 million in revenue. Maybe they don't live in the local community, or maybe they don't have a golden Rolodex. But then you can rate that person and measure that person's capability as compared to your ideal CEO, and make a well-thought-out, intelligent decision about whether or not that person is the right person for the CEO. So the board of directors, in their responsibility, is typically to have a search committee and a compensation committee. That's a board of directors level responsibility. So one of the first things I would encourage you to do is with the board of directors is to get one of the board of directors members to take the responsibility of leading the search committee and leading the compensation committee, and having that conversation with them, and do it as much as you can in a well thought out way. Unless you have somebody who's really close to the ideal candidate, immediately in your sights, I would encourage you to make an interim decision for this big event that's coming up in 3 weeks or so, and take a little bit longer time, 60 to 90 days, to find your new CEO, so that you have the chance of finding somebody that's as close to your ideal as possible. And Stephanie, I see a couple of follow-up notes there too. Would you mind reading those for us, and we'll see if we can't address this with some follow-up questions.
Sure. So Lewis continues, he was given a heads up by the board of directors that he's likely to be appointed the CEO. They're going to be voting on it in the next 24 hours. So his question is, since he was not a member of that of the board or the company, I'm not sure, Lewis, if that means that you were not previously a member of the executive staff, and so now he is.
Yeah.
Likely to be, and what's working, how to move forward in that position. Correct, he says. I'm
going to say a couple of things. First of all is to do your own self-assessment, is to really be fair and honest with yourself and the other members of the team if you choose to accept the position, and it sounds like that you're well down the road to doing that, then to be fair and honest with yourself about how you compare to what perhaps an ideal CEO might look like, so that you can understand what your gaps are. You know, what comes to mind for me is my Awakened CEO growth process, where step number 1 is to determine the vision for what this CEO should look like. Step number 2 is to understand what your current status is so that you can assess the gaps. And then step number 3 is to create a plan that allows you to close those gaps. Step number 4 is gather resources, and then step number 5 is execute the plan. That's the simple 5-step growth process that I use in practically every conversation that I'm having with CEOs. In your particular case, having that plan to move forward is urgent and critical. If you have the capability to hire outside resources, advisors, people who are expert in such things, then I encourage you to reach out and do that and get all the support that you can here over the next few critical days. Usually what I like to see a new CEO do is to bring the board of directors together, the board of managers together, and have a strategic planning engagement of some kind. For larger companies, that's a 2-day offsite where you get an opportunity to discuss everything that needs to be discussed and make great decisions with the rest of your executive teammates about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it and what their roles and responsibilities are. If you can't afford to have a professional facilitator like myself come in and work with those sessions, then maybe just a couple hours of conversation or a half a day or a day-long session in a virtual environment would really be what you need in order to make sure that you've talked about everything that you want to talk about. You as CEO, you know, Lewis, I know you well enough to know that your style is collaborative. You want to make sure that you're coming in with a collaborative style of management. It doesn't have to be consensus or democratic, but I certainly recommend that it be collaborative as opposed to autocratic or a Theory X style of management. Listen to what these people have to say. They know what the problems are and the challenges are, and they've probably got some pretty darn good ideas about what should happen first and what should happen next and how you solve the challenges at this company. So listen to what they have to say, make sure that they feel included in the decision-making process, and then make your decisions and go for it. And if there's anything that we can do to support you in that, of course, we are more than happy to jump in there and facilitate sessions or be a coach to you in this new role in whatever you can do. So my best wishes to you. Congratulations on your new position, and we look forward to hearing more and supporting you however we can. Congratulations again. Stephanie, next question or discussion topic.
Okay, awesome. Let me find that. I've got so many for you. Here's one from Regina.
Okay.
She wants to know when to incorporate. When's the best time to incorporate?
Let's talk about that term, incorporate, because there's actually 2 types of companies out there, or there's several different types of companies. Generally, there's LLCs, there's partnerships, and there's corporations. So the term incorporate oftentimes implies that you're going to have a C corporation or an S corporation, because partnerships are technically not corporations unless it's a professional corporation, and LLCs are not corporations, they're called companies. So I'm going to make that question a little bit broader and make it into when should we have a formal organization, or when should we establish our company, and what type of company should we establish. Each one of those, and there's some like 17 different ways to form a company. There's like a dozen different types of partnerships. There's, you know, general partnerships, there's limited liability partnerships, there's limited liability, limited partnerships, there's all kinds of different forms of partnerships. Then there's C Corps and S Corps and LLCs. You know, by default, LLCs are taxed as partnerships unless you elect to have an LLC that's taxed as a subchapter S corporation so that it becomes a pass-through entity. LLCs are always pass-through entities. They're either pass-through on partnership or pass-through as a sub-S corporation. So there are a lot of different forms of organization. It depends a lot on how many shareholders or investors that you're having. It depends on whether or not you want to keep the money in the business and be taxable as a C corporation, or if you're going to have just a very few people and want it to be a pass-through entity. Some types of industries are most often partnerships, other ones are most often LLCs, and other ones are most often corporations. So if you're going to raise a significant amount of capital from a significant number of investors, you want to do a C corporation. If you're going to have a very few types of shareholders, either an S corp or an LLC offers a lot more flexibility than an S corp does. S corp shareholders have to, I think they're limited to 100 shareholders, and there's only one type of stock available. You can't have different classes of stock like preferred stock and like you can with a C corp, and you also can't have different rights and privileges to the shareholders like you can with an LLC. So there's lots of considerations there, and of course a partnership might be good for you as well. Entertainment industry, real estate industry has a tendency to be LLCs. Consumer products and companies where you might have multiple rounds of funding and a lot of different shareholders have a tendency to be C corps. The question was really not what type of corporation should I have, but when should I do that? And the answer is pretty much immediately. Unless you're a sole proprietor with, I would say, $20,000 to $30,000 of revenue or less in a business where there's very little liability, then by all means form a company, form an LLC, form a subchapter S corporation to protect you. Generally speaking, when you do business in the name of a company, your personal assets are protected from any lawsuit or liability of the company itself, as long as you maintain the separation between your own personal expenses and your own personal bank accounts and your own personal activities and the activities of the business. So generally speaking, unless it's just a real part-time where you're only going to earn $5,000 or $10,000 a year and it's not worth it to really set the things up and you've got no liability, then I strongly recommend that you form an LLC or a subchapter S corporation from the very beginning. And it's not enough just to form the company. You also have to make sure that you are managing that company as a separate entity. So if it's a C corp or an S corp, that means that you have the bylaws, the articles of an organization, that you're doing shareholder meetings, that you're having regular meetings with the board of directors, that you're passing resolutions, and you're keeping all of that documentation together in your corporate record book. And for whatever sort of company it means that you're also forming separate bank accounts, and you are, as yourself, as a person who is operating in the business, are having expense reports or invoices sent to the company for your compensation, or you're on a payroll for your compensation, and you make sure that you're not commingling those funds, and you treat that company in the same way that you would treat any sort of employment at, say, a company like IBM or Oracle or some very, very large company where you had a W-2 at the end of the year, where you were on a payroll, where you filed expense reports, or if you're a contractor to that large company, that you would file an invoice each month and have the company pay that invoice each month. So the separation between your own personal funds and the funds of the company are essential. And generally speaking, I think any business, you can file that. You can file the business paperwork rather inexpensively. The exception, by the way, might be states like New York and California. Where I am in California, the second you start an LLC or you start a subchapter S corporation, you have to apply for a business license, and that is a fairly large sum of money here in California, and I suspect it is in other states as well. Back when I was living in Colorado, if you were a single member LLC, it only cost you $50 to start it, to get it registered with the state, and you didn't have to have an operating agreement. So it was very inexpensive in Colorado to start your company, so there was really not much reason to delay it at all. We wanted to do that from the very beginning. So generally speaking, the advice is that you want to do it very quickly, but you want to have intelligent conversations with your business advisors, with some attorneys that you might have, with accountants that you might have, so that you can pick the right form of company, the right form of organization from the very beginning and get yourself set up the way that you really want to get yourself set up. So that's the question on when do I start and how quickly should I start my company. What's the next question, Stephanie?
The next one from Regina, actually I've been doing research on this one, the WordPress versus Squarespace. Interesting. Which would you recommend?
You know, I may let you take that question a little bit, Stephanie, because I've never heard of Squarespace. I've heard of WordPress and specialized HTML sites and Joomla, and there's a couple of other very common development platforms out there. Magento is another one. There are some services like Shopify, which has its own capability of helping you design your own websites within the context of Shopify. That's much more than that. It's really a shopping cart and a shopping system for folks. So there are several of them out there popular. Of the ones that I'm familiar with, WordPress is by far better than Squarespace, simply because it has become the industry standard, which means that there's a tremendous amount of support available to you, and there's a lot of plugins in the case of WordPress that allow you to talk to other software packages, to have your own shopping cart, to manage security, to manage membership sites. I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds of plugins available to you, some free, some for a fee, that will allow you to extend the capability of the standard WordPress platform, in addition to hundreds of themes available, so you can really play with the look and feel of your website too. So from my perspective, WordPress is my favorite. It's the choice that I made for all of the websites that I have, and one which I would consider you to strongly, or encourage you to strongly consider. Stephanie, what guidance might you offer this person, Regina, on that?
Well, there's a couple things. The Squarespace seems to be, it has very good reviews and follow-ups for very graphic-oriented businesses like weddings, restaurants, industry or businesses that have a lot of pictures that look for that kind of high-end type of look. So it has very good reviews and a lot of referrals for those type of businesses, just so you know.
Thank you.
The other thing, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
It's also been around. Well, it's been around for 11 years now, 10 or 11 years. So it's not a new thing anymore, which is always one of the things that I always look for. New technology is pretty spiffy, but until it's been out there for a couple of years, I'm always hesitant because I don't want to put in all the work and then find out that they've been taken off the market, they've gone out of business, and now I have to start all over again. So that's just one of the things that, you know, Squarespace, again, has been out there for 10 or 11 years, so it doesn't have those type of issues anymore. Now, the other thing, WordPress has tons more templates, but the Squarespace templates, while they don't have as many, their templates appear to be much more I don't know if in-depth is the word. What's the word? They're more well-rounded. What's that word?
Robust.
What did you say? Robust. There you go. Robust is a great word. So they've got some pros and cons there. The other thing, and this is one thing that applies to all software and all the different tools that as entrepreneurs and business owners we use, just for you personally, Regina, I would really recommend that you take a look at your short and your long-term needs. One of the things that I always look at is, you know, they say you can't take it with you when you go. So as your business changes, morphs, grows, expands, you're going to have different needs. So just always look at your software, always look at those tools and ask yourself, is this going to grow with me? At what point is it not, you know, if I'm growing and I grow too big for this or my needs change and I have to leave and find something else, how difficult is it going to be for me to do that? Can I take stuff with me? Can I export it and do a simple import and get started again? So start really looking at those bells and whistles. Are they going to really help me? Are they a waste of my money? Am I going to be able to take this with me? How much can I take with me and expand when my needs change? And also, you want to look at your the time your learning curve, the learning curve. You may have 2 or 3 people on your team who are extremely knowledgeable about WordPress, and they may not know anything about Squarespace. So if it takes somebody 3 to 4 months to get up to speed with a new software tool, when you have one over here that somebody is an expert at, you have to really ask yourself, is it worth it? Where, you know, on that learning curve. If this software is going to be this much better and give me all these really cool things that I didn't have before, then that's one thing. But if it's not, then you really need to take into consideration that learning curve and how much productivity are you going to lose or gain when you switch. So
thank you, Stephanie.
That's just my 2 cents worth. Yep.
I appreciate you sharing that. And I had this sense while you were talking there that Squarespace may be the web development tool offered by the payment system Square, which I didn't put 2 and 2 together until that. Square was one of the very first payment systems that came out that gave you the ability to take credit cards via iPad or iPhone or smartphone in some way. And so that may be an extension of that, in which case it's probably, you know, it's probably very well supported and robust, but it also would limit you to using the Square. I don't imagine they allow you to do other merchant accounts with their particular system. Where if you do WordPress or one of those other more independent platforms, you have the ability to change your merchant account at the end of the day or whenever you want to, or have multiple merchant accounts, which I'm not sure that you have the ability to do with Square. So thank you a lot for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, they have some limitations on the e-commerce as well. So you're right. Those are something that and the hosting. I think you have to host with them too. Okay. With this. Software.
Yeah, I'm not at all surprised. I'm going to make a few additional comments here. We're about halfway through the presentation, so I want to talk a little bit about some of our upcoming activities. First of all, the distinctions that we have here at the Hoyt Management Group is that we really focus on the whole person. We honestly don't want a lot of your money. We just want you to get the support that you really need, that you can use and you can afford to make sure that those next steps in your business are the right steps for you, because I'm far more interested in your long-term success than I am taking your money today. So we offer a wide suite of support services. In some cases, we teach you how to do it for yourself. In other cases, we do it for you. And in some cases, we work together with you, as in writing business plans and financial models to help make sure that you're making great decisions and you're getting the tools that you need. We're going to have another webinar on the Awaken CEO system, what we call an Awaken Conversation, on Wednesday, April the 29th at 6 p.m. So watch your emails for sign-up information for that. We'd love to have you on that call. We talk more about what it means to be an Awaken CEO and the system that we've put together in place to help you manage your mindset, your methods, and your momentum for maximum business success. Our next office hours presentation will be on May 4th. That's a week from today. The topic is to be determined. I may talk about crowdfunding, which is at the top of my list right now. And let me know what sort of topics that you would like for me to address by going to paulsurvey.com and putting in your ideas there. So with that brief sponsor announcement, let's go back into questions and answers. Stephanie, do we have any other questions or discussion points for today's conversation?
We do. A couple things for Darlene. The presentation on great agreements was number 68 for her, if she would like to listen to that one for the, I think that's the one that you were
No, I was referring to
find out
partnerships or alliances. There's 2 other ones. That one of them was on transfer of value and one of them was on alliances and partnerships. I think they were fairly early on. But the one that you mentioned on forming great agreements is very, very important too, and I totally forgot about that one. So I guess, Darlene, there's 3 of them out there that we'd recommend that you go back and review. And for those of you who are thinking about reviewing the office hours presentations, the presentations themselves are about anywhere from 20 to 35 minutes in the middle of those. So you can go listen to several of the office hours presentations, and if you don't want to listen to the questions and answers, you can zip ahead to the presentation from the start and get the meat of the presentation and download the slides as a member of our tribe. And you can go through a lot of information very, very quickly that way. Next question.
Well, this is a good one. Why do you need more cash as your company grows?
That's oftentimes a mystery to people. You'll hear people preach that you need capital to grow your business, and it's almost always true, especially if you're in a rapid expansion mode. Now let's contrast that to being in a moderate growth mode or a very steady business. If your business is steady and it's not increasing in revenues, or it's just marginally increasing in revenues, say 3 or 4 or 5 or even 10% a year, then you can usually fund the growth of your business out of the profits of your business. And funding the growth of your business can mean having additional cash, and it can also mean investing in product development. So large ongoing manufacturing enterprises, public companies and large privately held companies, set aside a particular amount of their budget for product development, for research and development activities, so that they're constantly bringing new models and new products to the market to be able to leverage the customer base that they have and to replace previous models that they have. And that's a fairly common thing. But if your business is growing rapidly, there are 3 ways in which you're going to be spending cash that generally you can't do out of profits. One of them is product development. If you're expanding rapidly, then typically your investment in new product activities, in hiring outside firms or hiring your own engineers to do the design and development work, it's going to cost you a lot of money, and you generally can't afford that in the early days of business out of the profits of the business. The other 2 areas are accounts receivable and inventory. So if you are a product company, something that has a physical product that needs to be maintained in inventory, it's usually very difficult to grow your business without outside capital, and here's why. It's because as your revenues increase, the amount of inventory that you have on hand also needs to increase, and it's typically anywhere from 2 to 4 months of revenues. So if my revenues this month are $100,000 and next month my revenues I expect to be $125,000, I probably need to have at least $225,000 of inventory on hand at cost. And if it's at cost, that means typically it's 50% of what your revenues would be. So I need to have half of $225,000 or $112,000, $500 in inventory on hand right now in order to ship my products this month and ship my products next month. If I'm going to $150,000 the following month and $200,000 the following month, that means that my inventory requirements are growing each month from $112,000 to $150,000 to $175,000 to $200,000. If I have $200,000 of inventory on hand, that should allow me to sell $300,000 or $400,000 of inventory this month and the next month. If I'm expanding rapidly, like I'm increasing my sales 10 or 20% or 100% each month, then I really have to invest in inventory. At the same time, unless I'm a cash and carry business or I'm an all credit cards business, then I also have to finance accounts receivable. And if I'm working through distributors and agents and wholesalers and brokers and dealers and all those different sort of middlemen out there, they typically aren't going to purchase the materials from me, my products from me on credit cards. They're going to want terms. They're going to want 30-day terms or 45-day terms or 60-day terms. And that means that I have to finance not only the inventory, but I have to defer taking the profits that I would be making from those sales for 30, 45, 60 days or so. I have to finance accounts receivable too. And if I'm a young company, I don't have the opportunity to borrow money from traditional lending sources like banks or credit unions in order to fund my growth. The good news is that after you've demonstrated 3 years worth of profitable business, then you can borrow money from traditional sources, from banks and from credit unions, to fund the increasing need for accounts receivable and inventory, because they'll secure their loan on the basis of your accounts receivable and on your inventory, because they'll have some collateral value to it at that point in time, and they'll loan you the money that you need to grow your business from there on. So the big question is, what do I do for the first 3 years in my business? And the answer is that you either go to equity financing or non-traditional lending approaches such as private money lenders, or in some cases you might be able to go to crowdfunding as well, which in this particular case it would be crowdfunding to sell a product before the product has been designed or before the product has been ordered from the factories, so that you have that payment in advance and you're not out of your own pocket for either the design and development costs or for the inventory and accounts receivable costs associated with that. So the bottom line is that as you grow your business, and especially as you're growing your business rapidly, or if you're bringing a lot of new products to market, it is rare for young companies in their first 5 years or so of life to be able to fund their own growth through the profits of the company. There are some exceptions, of course, and I hope that your business is one of those exceptions. But for most businesses that are rapidly expanding, you have to go get money from non-traditional sources in order to meet the accounts receivable demands and the inventory demands and the research and development, and yes, the marketing demands and the other working capital demands of a company that's rapidly growing. I hope that was helpful to the person who asked that question, but it's always a surprise to many people about how much money it really takes to grow. By the way, my perspective on that is I've done well over 100 different financial models for businesses over the last 15 years or so. So I know firsthand at a gut level what it really takes in terms of additional cash to grow the business, and what sort of growth rate really requires continued influx of outside capital versus what growth rate allows you to grow from your own profits and from your own cash flow. I hope that was helpful to whoever asked that question. Stephanie, other questions that you might have?
Yep. Any encouragement or what can you tell advice for someone balancing multiple clients and multiple sales funnels?
I think what comes to mind is a couple of things. Number one is that highly creative, highly energized people like myself, have the inclination to take on more projects than they can really deal with. So number one piece of advice I would say is make sure that you're only taking on the amount of work that you really have the bandwidth and the expertise to deal with. I've seen highly creative people, in the worst case, they essentially, every phone call that they get, every email that they get, every little shiny object that they see, it looks like, it's time to change the business model or take on something else. And they have a tendency not to be able to focus enough time and attention to actually get things done and get things done well. In order to focus, I strongly recommend that you have these weekly staff meetings every week where you and your team decide what it is you're going to focus on, that you have your 90-day plans, that you have your long-term plans, and you're only taking on activities and opportunities that are consistent with your long-term, mid-term, and short-term plans, and that you use a little bit of what I call a time allocation model. The time allocation model says something like, this week I'm going to focus at least 10 or 12 hours on sales. I'm going to focus 10 hours on product development. I'm going to focus 20 hours on delivery. I'm going to focus another 10 hours on administration. I'm going to focus another 10 or 20 hours on emails and keeping in touch with my community. I'm going to focus 1 hour a day on social media or more, and really outline for yourself how you want to allocate your time during the week. A good way to start with that is to do a time log so that you're actually keeping track of the way that you're currently spending your time today. How much time are you spending on Facebook? How much time are you spending on email? How much time are you spending on product development, on sales-related activities, on marketing-related activities, on financial management-related activities, etc., so that you can have a baseline and then know in your own mind how it is you want to shift the time and focus in the weeks to come in order to better meet your midterm, short-term goals. So, that I think is the first step, is understanding how you're currently investing your time so that you can make some good decisions about how you want to shift your focus and your attention in coming weeks in order to most effectively meet the goals that you have for yourself. Yeah, I'm kind of an analyst at heart, a computer programmer, a project manager, an accountant, a CFO at heart. So usually when you come to me and ask me what the solution to a problem is, it's going to have something to do with analysis and tracking. I want you to keep track of some stuff. I want you to assess and analyze things. I want you to create plans, and then I want you to focus your time and attention on those plans so that you can bring them to completion. And that's the gift that I have to share with other people who may be a visionary or creative, or may be focused on far more in relationships than they are on analysis and implementation. But in my experience, having great ideas is about 1% of it, 1% of getting the job done. Having great plans and gathering the resources is another 2 to 3%. But the real meat of it comes in executing the plans that you put into place and implementing the plans that you put into place. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's where you get the job done, is in that 39 or 40 hours a week where you're actually doing the work. And that requires a lot of focus and attention to the goals that you have. I hope that was a reasonable way of answering that question. Stephanie, did you have any guidance there or thoughts for that?
Well, I was thinking about the multiple sales funnels, and I would ask that you take a really good look at that, and take a look at, does it have to be multiple sales funnels? Can it be, one big funnel? How does it have to be multiple? How can I put them together? How can I transition one product into the other? If that's a possibility. I would also take a look at, when I hear multiple sales funnels, typically you've got a team of people, experts and specialists for each one of those. So if you're doing that all by yourself, that would be a really big challenge. I'd love to chat with you some more about that and see how we can help you with that. But yeah, there's some really cool things that you can do with sales funnels, but the best way to do it is to make sure that it works for you.
Well said. I also make a point that one of the most challenging things that I've seen young CEOs and entrepreneurs do is make a focus choice of deciding, this is my business, this is the narrow niche that I want to serve, and really focusing all their time and attention on a particular niche or a window of opportunity that they find. One of the things that's very common is that we knock on a lot of doors when our business is first getting going, hoping that we're going to find that one window of opportunity that really takes off and we'll be able to focus thereafter. But it's a little bit counterintuitive, but sometimes you have to focus before the opportunity becomes apparent to you. So you focus and decide, this is who I am, this is how I'm going to present myself as being unique in the marketplace, these are my distinctions, and then you find the customers that resonate with your particular distinction, as opposed to the other way around, which is knock on a whole bunch of different doors until you find one that's open, and then you decide that that's the way you're going to brand and position your business. It's really quite an interesting game. Some people are very successful in the knocking on a lot of doors and finding one that finally opens to them, but I think far more commonly people are successful when they declare to the world, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is how I'm unique and different from other people, and then go out and find the clients that resonate with that. That's why we have common terms like your unique selling proposition, the USP, or unique value proposition that you have, UVP, so that you can find a way to set yourself apart in the minds of your prospects and your customers. Stephanie, you got 12:56. I think we got time for one more quick question if you have one.
Why is marketing so hard?
Why marketing is, I oftentimes say that marketing is I put it as second on my list as being challenging of the key performance areas. And the reason is because marketing keeps changing. It keeps changing all the time with technology. And I think even more importantly is that marketing messages get filtered out by people's brains. I did an office hours presentation a few weeks ago on The Power of Habit, which is a great book written by Charles Duhigg that talked about how we in our brains essentially learn to ignore things. We can live next to a feedlot and within 6 weeks we don't even smell the cow poop anymore. We learn to ignore the billboards, we learn to ignore television advertisements, we learn to ignore banner ads on websites, we learn to ignore spam emails. We just learn to ignore things because our brain wants more than anything to be very, very efficient and quickly assess whether something coming into our consciousness, into our field of view, is a threat or holds the promise of great value. So we very, very quickly, at a subconscious level, within milliseconds sometimes, choose to ignore or pay attention to something that comes into our awareness. And that means with marketing messages, we have to change up the message and we have to change up the way the message is being delivered constantly over time in order to gather the attention of our marketplace. All of that is complicated by the fact that with technology, people are getting, dozens of times more, maybe even 100 times more marketing messages delivered to them on a daily basis today than they used to get delivered to them. When I was growing up in the 1950s and 60s, we didn't see any marketing messages at all until our homework was done and we could turn on the TV for an hour or so in the evening, and then we saw a few commercials and watched them, but there were only like 2 or 3 channels, so we didn't get an opportunity to see many marketing messages. We may have had the daily newspaper that we read, but they didn't have a lot of advertisements on the front page or on the comics page or on the sports pages, so we shouldn't see very many marketing messages at all. I know today I see 100 times or 1,000 times more marketing messages than I've ever seen before, especially when I was a young man. So we're seeing a lot more marketing messages. The brain is filtering out the messages themselves, not only the content, but also on their way of delivering the content. Maybe we just don't even see billboards anymore, regardless of what's on the billboard. Or we don't even see banner ads on websites, regardless of what's on the banner ad. That happens quite a bit. So we, as CEOs and entrepreneurs, one of our big challenges is how do we deliver a message in a way that attracts the attention of our customers and prospects and gets it to stick. And that's one of the challenges that we all have in business, is to deliver effective messages and keep changing those messages up over time. The messages that work today are not going to work 90 days from now or 2 years from now, certainly. So you have to continually update your message and find clever ways of delivering those messages in ways that attract the attention of your marketplace, and that's the challenge of marketing. With that, I think that we'll call it an end. It's 1 o'clock, and I want to thank everybody who participated in today's call. For those of you who are listening, we'll do another live group coaching call in about 4 weeks or so, and we'll do another office hours presentation next Monday and an Awaken CEO presentation this Wednesday. So until I see you again, either next Wednesday or this Wednesday or next Monday, this is Paul Hoyt thanking you for attending and wishing you a most marvelous and prosperous day. Bye-bye.